Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about Ikigai.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you sent over some really fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Excerpts from the book Ikigai, The Japanese Secret to a Long and Happy Life.
Okay.
And then also just like a few pages from some academic paper.
Mm.
I think it'll really round out our understanding of Ikigai, but
Yeah.
most of us don't have time to read all that stuff, right?
Right.
So we're going to zero in on what is Ikigai, how does it impact longevity,
Yeah.
and then most importantly, like what can we actually do with this knowledge?
I love that approach.
Yeah.
It's about making this wisdom
Hmm.
practical, not just theoretical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the book kicks off by describing Ikigai as the happiness of always being busy.
Hmm.
When I first read that, I was like, wait, isn't the point of like living a long life to like finally relax?
Right.
But then it clicked. Like, it's not about just being busy just to be busy.
Yeah.
It's about having that driving force, that passion,
Right.
that thing that gets you out of bed in the morning.
Exactly. And it makes me think of a study that I read one time where they looked at retirees who volunteered regularly,
Okay.
and they found that they lived significantly longer than retirees who didn't volunteer.
Wow.
And it wasn't just about being active. It seemed to be this
Yeah.
sense of purpose and contribution that really made a difference.
It's like that old saying, if you want to live a long life, have something to live for.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And the book really emphasizes this idea that, purpose is unique to each individual.
Yeah.
It's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
Right.
It's something we have to discover through a patient search, as they put it.
And, sometimes that search involves stepping outside of that traditional work mindset.
Yeah.
Because the book talks about how in Japan, the concept of retirement as like a complete withdrawal from work
Yeah.
doesn't really exist.
Right.
People continue pursuing their passions,
Yeah.
often through like crafts or community involvement,
Huh.
well into their later years. It's really fascinating.
It is. And speaking of fascinating places, the book takes us to Okinawa,
Okay.
an island with the highest life expectancy in the world.
Wow.
And specifically, they zoom in on this village called Ogimi,
Uh-huh.
nicknamed the Village of Longevity.
The Village of Longevity.
Now, you'd think it's all about diet or genetics, right?
Right.
But the book highlights something else entirely:
What's that?
the power of strong social bonds.
Oh, you're talking about the moai, right? These
Yeah.
tight-knit social groups
Yes.
that provide financial and emotional support.
Exactly.
They're like built-in families,
Yes.
helping each other through thick and thin.
They even have this whole philosophy called yumaru,
I love that word.
this beautiful concept of teamwork and mutual aid.
Hmm.
And get this, they have incredibly low rates of dementia in Ogimi.
Wow.
It makes you wonder, is it the community support,
Yeah.
a sense of belonging that keeps their minds sharp?
It's certainly a factor, and it really ties into what we're seeing in longevity research globally.
Mm-hmm.
Social connection is proving to be as crucial for health as like diet and exercise.
Right. It's not just about living long, it's about living well surrounded by people who care.
Absolutely.
So maybe the secret to a long life isn't just about what we eat or how much we exercise,
Right.
but who we spend our time with. That's a pretty powerful thought.
It is.
And speaking of powerful thoughts, the book introduces us to this intriguing concept called logotherapy, developed by Viktor Frankl. Have you heard of him?
Of course, Viktor Frankl, he's most famous for his book, Man's Search for Meaning,
Right.
which details his experiences in Auschwitz during World War II.
Right.
And it's remarkable because even in the face of unimaginable suffering,
Yeah.
Frankl found that humans are driven by a will to meaning.
That's so profound. And logotherapy is all about helping people discover that meaning, that purpose in their lives, even amidst hardship.
Yeah.
Now the book dives into several of Frankl's principles. But the one that really stuck with me was this idea that obsessing over a desire can actually hinder its fulfillment.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
it's like the harder you try to force something,
Yeah.
the more it eludes you.
It's a paradox, isn't it?
It is.
But I think there's wisdom in surrendering to the process,
Yeah.
in letting go of rigid expectations and trusting that things will unfold as they should.
So in a way, finding your Ikigai is not about desperately searching for it,
Right.
but creating the conditions for it to reveal itself.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating an open mind, a playful curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
a willingness to experiment and explore, and maybe even embracing a little bit of that happiness of always being busy in the process.
I like the embracing the journey, not just the destination.
Yeah.
But before we get too philosophical,
Okay.
there's another concept the book brings up that I'm dying to unpack.
What's that?
Flow.
Ah, yes, flow.
Yeah.
That magical state where you're so engrossed in an activity that time seems to disappear.
Ah,
You're completely present, energized,
right.
and in your element. You've experienced that before,
Right,
right?
absolutely. It's like when I'm writing and the words are just flowing,
Yes,
or when I'm lost in a good book and I completely forget about the world around me.
exactly. And what's fascinating is that those moments of flow can be a powerful clue to discovering your ikigai.
Oh,
Because when you're in flow, you're not only engaged, but
yeah.
you're also tapping into your strengths and passions.
So it's like those flow activities are breadcrumbs leading us to our purpose. I
Oh,
love that analogy.
I love that.
Now, the book actually lays out 7 conditions for achieving flow,
Okay.
which I think could be incredibly valuable for our listeners.
Yeah.
So are you ready for like a crash course in flow?
Hit me with it.
Okay, so first up, you need a clear goal in mind.
Okay.
You got to have the skills to actually do the thing.
Okay.
And here's where it gets interesting. You need feedback,
Mm-hmm.
not just from others, but also from yourself.
Okay.
Like sensing your own progress.
It's about having that internal compass that tells you if you're on the right track.
Right.
If you're pushing yourself in a way that's both challenging and rewarding.
Right. And then there's this idea of knowing where to go,
Okay.
literally or metaphorically.
Yeah.
Think of it like navigating a maze or even like a creative project.
Okay.
But here's the real kicker. You need to perceive challenges
Uh-huh.
that push you to your limits.
Issue to your limits.
And at the same time, you need to believe that you have the skills to meet those challenges.
Right. So it's that sweet spot where you're stretching your abilities,
Mm-hmm.
but not overwhelmed.
Right. And finally, and this is probably the most challenging one in our tech-saturated world,
Okay.
you got to be free from distractions.
Oh, yeah.
That means creating a space,
Right.
physically and mentally, where you can truly focus.
And this is where things get practical, right? Because in a world of constant notifications
Yes.
and information overload, finding that space for focus can be a real challenge.
Exactly. But luckily, the book offers some simple yet powerful strategies to help us minimize distractions and reclaim our focus.
Oh, that's good.
So what are some of your favorites?
Well, I'm a huge fan of tech-free mornings and evenings.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing how much calmer and clearer my mind feels when I give it a break from screens.
Totally. And I've been experimenting with like designated tech fasting days where I completely unplug from devices and reconnect with myself in the offline world.
That's great.
It's like a mini digital detox.
I love that.
For those of us who struggle with staying focused during work, there's the Pomodoro technique.
Right.
Working in 25-minute bursts with short breaks in between has been a game changer for my productivity.
Yeah, and to add to that, the book suggests bundling routine tasks together,
Yes.
like answering emails or making phone calls,
Uh-huh.
instead of constantly switching between them.
Right.
It helps minimize mental clutter and free up space for those deeper flow-inducing activities.
Exactly. It's about being intentional with our time and energy, creating a rhythm that supports our focus and well-being.
I love that.
So there you have it, a crash course in flow.
Awesome.
And remember, it's not just about work or hobbies.
Right.
It's about finding those pockets of joy and engagement in every aspect of our lives.
Absolutely.
But before we dive into the practicalities of like actually finding your Ikigai, I want to introduce you to some real-life experts, the masters of longevity.
Okay.
Ready for some inspiration?
Absolutely. I think we can all learn a thing or two from these individuals who've not only lived long lives, but truly thrived.
Right, and the book doesn't just focus on centenarians in Okinawa.
Yeah.
It takes a global perspective showcasing people from all walks of life who found their own unique Ikigai.
Yeah.
One that really struck a chord with me was Maria Capovilla,
Okay.
who held the title of world's oldest person for a while.
Oh, wow.
The book mentions that she attributed her long life to a vegetarian diet. It makes you wonder, is there a connection between diet and longevity?
Well, the Okinawa example certainly suggests there might be.
Right.
But with Maria, it wasn't just about what she ate. It was her overall lifestyle.
Uh-huh.
She stayed active well into her later years, and she had a deep connection with her family and community.
And then there's Jean Comment, who lived to the incredible age of 122.
Wow.
The book describes her as having this amazing sense of humor, even in her final years. I mean, can you imagine cycling until you're 100?
That's incredible.
Talk about staying young at heart.
It is. And it reinforces this idea that longevity isn't just about physical health.
Right.
It's about mental and emotional well-being, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of mental well-being, the book tells the story of Walter Browning, who lived to 114.
Okay.
What struck me about him was his emphasis on staying mentally engaged. He wasn't afraid of death,
Wow.
but he believed that work and purpose kept him going.
It's a reminder that our minds need stimulation just as much as our bodies do.
Right.
And finding activities that challenge us, that keep us learning and growing, can contribute to a longer, more fulfilling life.
And let's not forget about the artists who've maintained their passion well into their later years. The book talks about Hokusai, the Japanese woodblock print artist who believed his best work came after the age of 70.
Can you imagine having that perspective?
Right.
Feeling like your creative peak is still ahead of you even in your 70s?
Right.
It challenges our assumptions about aging, doesn't it?
It totally does. And then there's Christopher Plummer,
Okay.
who expressed the desire to drop dead on stage. Talk about dedication.
Wow.
And Osamu Tezuka, the creator of Astro Boy, whose last words were, "Please just let me work."
It's inspiring, isn't it, to have that level of passion and purpose?
It really is.
To want to keep creating and contributing until your very last breath.
It makes me think, what are those things that light us up,
Yeah.
that make us feel truly alive?
Yeah.
Maybe that's where we should be focusing our energy.
I couldn't agree more, and it ties back to this idea of finding our Ikigai.
Right.
That sweet spot where our passions, our skills, and our values intersect. And remember, it's not a static thing.
Yeah.
It can evolve over time as we grow and change.
So it's not about finding the one true calling,
Right.
but rather being open to exploring different paths and following our curiosity.
Exactly. And sometimes that exploration leads us to unexpected places.
Yeah.
Revealing hidden talents and passions we never knew we had.
Speaking of unexpected places, I think it's time we take a virtual trip to Ogimi, that village of longevity we mentioned earlier.
Okay.
The book painted such a vivid picture of life there, and I'm curious to dive deeper into what makes this place so special.
Let's go. Remember, we're not just looking for a blueprint for longevity,
Right.
but rather insights into how we can create a life that's rich with meaning, connection, and joy.
So as we step into the world of Ogimi, what stands out to you? What are those subtle but significant details that might hold the key to their long and happy lives?
Well, one thing that immediately struck me was their deep sense of community.
Okay.
Everyone seems to contribute in some way, whether it's through volunteer work, helping out their neighbors, or simply participating in the numerous social gatherings and celebrations.
It's like that saying, it takes a village. But in this case, the village is actually contributing to its residents' longevity. They're not just living long, they're living together.
Exactly. And they have this beautiful concept called yumaru,
Yes.
which we mentioned earlier.
Uh-huh.
It's this philosophy of teamwork and mutual aid that permeates their entire culture. It's not about individual achievement,
Okay.
but about collective well-being.
And it makes you wonder, could that sense of shared purpose,
Right.
that feeling of belonging, be contributing to their low rates of dementia?
It's certainly a compelling hypothesis,
Right?
and it reinforces the idea that social connection isn't just a nice to have.
Right?
It's a fundamental human need
Yes.
that impacts our health and well-being on a deep level.
So maybe the secret to a long life isn't just about what we do for ourselves,
Right.
but what we do for others. It's about finding our place in the community, contributing our unique gifts and talents, and weaving ourselves into the fabric of something larger than ourselves.
Beautifully said.
Okay, so we've explored the power of community and connection in Ogimi.
Yes.
But let's be honest, we can't all just pack up and move to Okinawa.
Right.
So what are some practical takeaways we can apply to our own lives,
Yeah.
even if we live in a bustling city or a quiet suburb?
Well, I think the key is to be intentional about creating those opportunities for connection and contribution in our own communities.
Okay.
It could be as simple as volunteering at a local charity, joining a book club, or even just making an effort to connect with our neighbors.
And it's not just about grand gestures. It's
Right.
about those small everyday acts of kindness and connection.
Exactly.
Like checking in on an elderly neighbor, offering to help a friend with a project, or simply smiling at a stranger on the street.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a mindset of generosity and interconnectedness, recognizing that our well-being is intertwined with the well-being of those around us.
I love that. And speaking of well-being, let's shift gears and dive into the Ikigai diet. I know the word diet can be a bit loaded, but the book presents it in a really refreshing way. It's not about restriction or deprivation, but rather about abundance, variety, and mindful eating.
You're right. It's not a diet in the traditional sense,
Yeah.
but rather a way of eating that nourishes both body and mind.
So what are some of the key principles that make the Okinawan diet so unique? What can we learn from their approach to food?
Well, one thing that stands out is their emphasis on variety.
Okay.
They eat a wide range of foods, averaging 18 different types per day.
18 different foods.
Can you imagine having that much diversity on your plate?
Wow, that's impressive.
Right.
I bet it makes meals a lot more interesting and flavorful.
It does.
What else?
They prioritize plant-based foods with vegetables, making up a significant portion of the daily calories. They also eat fish regularly.
Okay.
But meat, mostly pork, is consumed only occasionally.
It's a far cry from the meat-centric diets we often see in Western cultures, isn't it?
It is.
It makes you wonder, could that be a contributing factor to their longevity?
It's certainly a possibility. And another key point is that sugar is rarely consumed in the traditional Okinawan diet.
So no daily dose of dessert?
Not really.
That's a tough one. But I can see how limiting sugar could have a positive impact on overall health.
And perhaps most importantly, they practice harahachi-bu,
What is that?
eating until they're 80% full.
Wait, stop eating when you're still a little bit hungry.
It takes some discipline,
It does.
but it's a skill that can be cultivated with practice.
Okay.
And the book highlights how this practice not only helps regulate calorie intake, but also promotes a sense of gratitude and appreciation for the food we consume.
That's such a beautiful way to look at it.
It is.
It's not about deprivation.
Right.
It's about savoring each bite and honoring our body's needs.
Exactly. And it ties into this idea of mindfulness that permeates so many aspects of Okinawan culture, from their eating habits to their social interactions to their daily routines.
Okay, so we've covered diet now. Let's move our bodies. What are some of the physical practices that support longevity in Okinawa and beyond? What can we learn from their approach to movement?
Well, the book highlights a variety of practices, and what's fascinating is that they emphasize not just physical fitness, but also mental clarity and a connection to one's inner world.
Oh, I love that.
It's about moving with intention and awareness.
It's not just about hitting the gym or logging miles.
Right.
It's about finding movement practices that nourish both body and soul. So what are some examples?
Well, one practice that stood out to me was radio taiso, which is a popular Japanese morning exercise routine.
Okay.
It's a series of gentle movements that are often done in groups, promoting not just physical flexibility, but also a sense of community and shared purpose.
It sounds like a great way to start the day.
Yeah.
Getting your body moving and connecting with others all at the same time. What else?
Of course, yoga is mentioned. It's a practice that's gained immense popularity worldwide, and for good reason.
Yeah.
It combines physical postures with breathing exercises and meditation,
Right.
promoting flexibility, strength balance, and mental clarity.
And the book also talks about Tai Chi, a Chinese martial art that emphasizes flow balance and inner peace.
Yes, it's a beautiful practice that cultivates mindfulness and a connection to one's energy.
And then there's qigong, which is an energy cultivation practice that focuses on specific movements and breathing techniques to promote health and well-being. It's a practice that's been around for centuries, and it's gaining increasing recognition for its numerous health benefits.
And let's not forget about shiatsu,
Oh, right.
which is a Japanese massage therapy that works with energy flow in the body.
Okay.
It's a practice that's both relaxing and invigorating,
Yeah.
promoting physical and emotional well-being.
It's fascinating how many of these practices originated in Eastern cultures,
It is.
where the mind-body connection has been recognized and honored for centuries.
Right. And it makes you wonder, could our Western emphasis on separating mind and body be contributing to some of our modern-day health challenges?
It's a thought-provoking question.
It is.
And I think the book's exploration of these practices challenges us to reconsider our approach to health and well-being,
Yeah.
embracing a more holistic perspective that honors the interconnectedness of body, mind, and spirit.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've explored diet and movement now. Let's dive into a topic that's essential for navigating the ups and downs of life, resilience, and anti-fragility. The book really dives into these ideas, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on how they relate to Ikigai and longevity.
What's fascinating is that resilience and antifragility go beyond simply enduring hardship.
Right.
They're about the ability to bounce back from setbacks, to adapt to change, and even to grow stronger from difficult experiences.
Right.
It's like a muscle that we can strengthen through practice and adversity.
And the book defines resilience in a really relatable way. It's the ability to bounce back from setbacks, adapt to change, and maintain a positive outlook even when times are tough.
Yeah,
I think we can all relate to that, right? Life throws us curveballs.
absolutely.
And it's our ability to navigate those challenges that determines our long-term well-being.
It highlights the influence of Stoicism,
Okay.
a philosophy that emphasizes focusing on what we can control, accepting what we cannot,
Right.
and training our minds to resist negativity.
Right. It's about finding that inner strength and peace, even amidst chaos and uncertainty.
And both Buddhism and Stoicism emphasize the importance of living in the present moment
Yeah.
and accepting the impermanence of all things.
It's about letting go of attachments to outcomes and finding peace in the midst of change because, let's face it, change is inevitable and our ability to adapt and flow with it is crucial for our well-being.
And then there's wabi-sabi, that beautiful Japanese concept of finding beauty in imperfection and impermanence.
I love that concept.
It's about appreciating the cracks and crevices,
Yeah.
the natural wear and tear that tells a story.
It's a perspective that can really shift how we view the world and our place in it,
You can.
right? It's about embracing the beauty of aging, of the natural cycles of life and death,
Yeah.
and finding peace in the impermanence of all things.
And then there's Ichigo-ichi, the idea that each moment is unique and fleeting, urging us to cherish every encounter.
Right.
It's a reminder to be present, to savor the beauty of the present moment, knowing that it will never come again in exactly the same way.
So how does all of this connect to anti-fragility? The book mentions Nassim Nicholas Taleb's definition of anti-fragility,
Right.
not just withstanding challenges, but actually growing stronger from them.
Exactly.
It's like leveling up in a video game.
Yeah.
Each challenge makes you more resilient and capable.
And the book provides some practical strategies for building anti-fragility in our lives.
Okay, like what?
One is creating redundancies,
Okay.
like having multiple income streams, diverse friendships, and a range of interests. It's
Oh,
about not putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
that makes so much sense. It's about spreading out your risk and creating a safety net for when unexpected challenges arise. Because, let's be honest, life is full of surprises.
It is.
And our ability to adapt and pivot is crucial for our long-term well-being.
Another strategy is balancing conservative bets with calculated risks.
Okay.
It's about playing it safe in some areas of your life,
Uh-huh.
while also being open to experimenting and pushing your boundaries in others.
Okay.
It's about finding that sweet spot between stability and growth.
And finally, the book suggests identifying and eliminating sources of fragility in our lives. So what are some examples of things that make us fragile?
Well, it could be anything that creates a single point of failure.
Yeah.
For example, relying solely on one source of income,
Uh-huh.
being overly dependent on one person for emotional support,
Right.
or having all your savings invested in a single asset class.
Right. It's about diversifying our lives and creating systems that can withstand shocks and setbacks.
Exactly.
It's about building a foundation that's strong enough to weather any storm.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that building anti-fragility is an ongoing process,
Yeah.
not a destination.
Right.
It's about constantly assessing our vulnerabilities and making adjustments as needed.
Right.
It's about being proactive rather than reactive.
So it's about taking ownership of our lives.
Right.
Creating a life that's not only enjoyable, but also resilient and adaptable. It's about being prepared for whatever life throws our way and having the strength and flexibility to not only survive, but thrive.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to this idea of Ikigai as a guiding principle for living a long and fulfilling life.
Right.
It's not just about finding our passion.
Uh-huh.
It's about cultivating the resilience and adaptability to pursue that passion through all of life's inevitable challenges.
And speaking of pursuing our passions, the book touches on this fascinating concept of microflow, which I think could be incredibly valuable for our listeners. Have you ever heard of this?
Of course, microflow is all about finding those little pockets of joy and engagement throughout our day,
Yeah.
even in the most mundane tasks.
Right.
It's about bringing a sense of mindfulness and playfulness
Yeah.
to even the most ordinary activities.
And the book gives the example of an elevator operator in Tokyo who's been doing the same job for years, but she still approaches it with enthusiasm and a sense of flow.
I love that example.
It's amazing how she's transformed a repetitive task into a mini performance.
It's a reminder that we have the power to choose how we approach even the most ordinary moments. We can either go through the motions, or we can bring a sense of presence, intention, and even artistry to every task.
Exactly. And the book mentions that even Bill Gates washes the dishes every night
Really?
and finds it to be a relaxing and mindful activity.
I love that.
It's about finding those little rituals throughout the day
Yeah.
that bring us a sense of peace, focus, and even joy.
So how can we cultivate this sense of microflow in our own lives? What are some practical tips for finding joy in the everyday?
Well, the book suggests focusing on the process
Okay.
rather than just the outcome. So instead of rushing through the dishes, we can pay attention to the feeling of warm water, the scent of the soap, the methodical movements of our hands.
Yeah.
It's about turning a chore into a mindful ritual.
And we can also add a layer of challenge or creativity to routine tasks.
Okay.
If you're folding laundry,
Yeah.
try to fold each item perfectly
Uh-huh.
or experiment with different folding techniques.
Or if you're doing paperwork,
Right.
try to find ways to streamline the process or make it more visually appealing. It's about engaging our minds and finding ways to make even the most mundane tasks feel more enjoyable.
Exactly. It's about bringing a sense of playfulness and intention to every aspect of our lives.
And remember, those small moments of microflow can add up to create a more joyful and fulfilling day.
Absolutely. It's about cultivating a mindset of appreciation and finding those little sparks of joy in the everyday.
And speaking of finding joy in the everyday, the book touches on another fascinating aspect of Japanese culture, the prevalence of rituals. What role do you think rituals play in cultivating a sense of ikigai and longevity?
Rituals are fascinating, aren't they?
Yeah.
They offer structure, a sense of purpose,
Uh-huh.
and a connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Right.
In Japan, rituals are deeply woven into the fabric of daily life, from tea ceremonies to traditional festivals.
And the book points out something really interesting.
What's that?
In Japan, the process, the manners, the how you do something
Okay.
is often considered more important than the end result.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's like they're saying, enjoy the journey, not just the destination.
It's a mindset shift, isn't it? It reminds me of the concept of flow we discussed earlier.
Yeah?
When we focus on the process on each step in detail,
Yeah.
we're more likely to get into that state of deep engagement and enjoyment.
It's like savoring the present moment rather than constantly striving for some future outcome.
Right.
And the book suggests that this ritualistic approach can make it easier to find flow in our work, too, when we have a clear process to follow, when we value the quality of our work over just hitting deadlines.
Yeah.
It becomes a more mindful and fulfilling experience.
And it reduces stress, doesn't it?
It does?
When we're not constantly chasing outcomes,
Yeah.
we can relax into the rhythm of the work itself.
So how can we incorporate this concept of ritual into our own lives?
Yeah.
Even if we don't live in Japan, can we create our own rituals that bring a sense of flow and purpose to our days?
Absolutely. The book suggests creating daily rituals for starting and ending your day,
Okay.
for tackling specific tasks,
Mm.
or even for simply taking a moment to pause and reconnect with yourself.
I love that it's about creating a rhythm for our lives, a structure that supports our well-being
Right.
and helps us stay grounded amidst the chaos.
And those rituals don't have to be elaborate or time-consuming.
Right.
And those rituals don't have to be elaborate or time-consuming. It could be as simple as taking a few minutes each morning to meditate or enjoying a cup of tea in silence before starting work. The key is finding practices that resonate with you and that help you create a sense of intention and purpose.
It's like setting an intention for the day, a way to ground ourselves and connect with our inner selves before diving into the demands of the world.
And rituals aren't just for personal growth. They can also help us connect with others and build stronger communities. Think about rituals like sharing meals with loved ones, celebrating holidays together, or even simply greeting each other with a smile and a kind word.
Those small gestures can be so powerful, can't they? They create a sense of belonging, of shared meaning, of connection.
Exactly. So as you reflect on your own life, consider how you can incorporate rituals, both big and small, into your day-to-day experience, whether it's creating a morning routine, establishing a weekly family dinner, or simply taking a moment to appreciate the beauty of nature. Rituals can help us find flow, purpose, and joy in even the most ordinary aspects of life.
That's a beautiful thought, finding those little pockets of magic in the everyday. And it brings us full circle to the concept of Ikigai, doesn't it? It's about finding those things that make life worth living, that give us a sense of purpose, joy, and connection.
It's a journey, not a destination, and it looks different for everyone. The key is to be open to exploring, to listening to your inner voice, and to following your curiosity.
And to remember that even small steps can lead to big changes. Start by incorporating 1 or 2 new rituals into your daily routine, or try a new movement practice that appeals to you. Explore different ways to connect with your community, or bring more mindfulness to your meals.
The path to Ikigai is a lifelong adventure, and every step we take brings us closer to living a life that's filled with purpose, joy, and deep fulfillment.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Ikigai. We hope it's sparked some inspiration and given you some practical tools to create a life that's rich with meaning, connection, and joy.
And remember, the journey continues. Keep exploring, keep growing, and keep embracing the beauty of a life lived with intention and purpose. It could be as simple as, taking a few minutes each morning to meditate
Right.
or enjoying a cup of tea in silence before starting your workday.
Yeah.
The key is finding those practices that resonate with you and that help you create a sense of intention and purpose.
It's like setting an intention for the day, a way to ground ourselves and connect with our inner selves before diving into the demands of the world.
And rituals aren't just for personal growth.
Mhm.
They can also help us, connect with others and build stronger communities.
Right.
Rituals like, sharing meals with loved ones,
Mm-hmm.
celebrating holidays together, or even simply greeting each other with a smile and a kind word.
Those small gestures can be so powerful, can't they? They create a sense of belonging, of shared meaning, of connection.
Exactly. So as you reflect on your own life, consider how you can incorporate rituals, both big and small, into your day-to-day experience. Whether it's, creating a morning routine, establishing a weekly family dinner, or simply taking a moment to appreciate the beauty of nature.
Right.
Rituals can help us find flow, purpose, and joy in even the most ordinary aspects of life.
That's a beautiful thought, finding those little pockets of magic in the everyday. And it brings us full circle to the concept of Ikigai, doesn't it?
It does.
It's about finding those things that make life worth living, that give us a sense of purpose, joy, and connection.
It's a journey, not a destination, and it looks different for everyone. The key is to be open to exploring, to listening to your inner voice, and to following your curiosity.
And to remember that even small steps can lead to big changes. Start by incorporating one or two new rituals into your daily routine, or try a new movement practice that appeals to you. Explore different ways to connect with your community or bring more mindfulness to your meals.
The path to Ikigai is a lifelong adventure, and every step we take brings us closer to living a life that's filled with purpose, joy, and deep fulfillment.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Ikigai. We hope it sparked some inspiration and given you some practical tools to create a life that's rich with meaning, connection, and joy.
And remember, the journey continues. Keep exploring, keep growing, and keep embracing the beauty of a life lived with intention and purpose.